Welcome to Positive Path, a podcast ministry of Unity of San Antonio. Reverend Nina Clark, our senior minister, extends an invitation for you to join us in person on Sundays at 11 o'clock. Unity of San Antonio is a progressive spiritual community where everyone is welcome to attend and serve. We have many opportunities for you to get plugged in, including an active youth and family ministry, classes and workshops, fellowship after church, and many more fun events throughout the year. For more information, check out our website at unityofsa.org. Now, let's get into this week's message.
So once upon a time, I had a sales business, believe it or not. I was not very good at it, but I had it. And in the course of that business, I learned that everyone organizes differently. And once upon a time, when I trained horses, I learned that every horse learns differently. And once upon a time, when I homeschooled my children, I learned that my children had different learning styles. And these experiences, along with many others, helped me to learn that we are all wired differently. We all learn differently. And what appeals and works for one doesn't necessarily work for another. And so it is with the 12 powers. From the feedback I've gotten over the past 6 weeks, I hear that for some of you, the 12 powers landed as, now things make sense. And for others, it was more, I have less resistance to the 12 powers than I used to. And for some, it was more like, interesting. I'd like to learn more about that. So regardless of where on the spectrum you land, I want to close this series by showing that while each talk may have landed as a power working in isolation, they actually work together. 7 weeks ago, we began a journey using characters from Middle-earth, Hogwarts, Panem, a galaxy far, far away, and with Jordan, the Matrix, to illustrate the 12 powers identified by Charles Fillmore. And through it all, there has been a thread running beneath the surface that these powers, all 12 of them, don't operate in isolation. Faith does not sit patiently in the corner filing its nails while strength does the heavy lifting. Love doesn't make a phone call while wisdom takes the wheel. They work together. They are facets of one wholeness already present in you. And while Charles identified these powers and described what each one does, he didn't teach them as 12 separate switches to flip one at a time as needed. We can develop them individually, but they work in concert together. The powers are distinguishable from one another, but not separable. Ultimately, Charles taught 12 ways of naming what is ultimately unnameable. The infinite potential of the one life expressing through a human soul. I love the analogy of the 12 powers, each likened to an instrument in an orchestra. The music is not to be played by 12 separate soloists, but together as a harmonious symphony. So today, I would like to revisit a few of our characters through a wider lens, because I'd like to show you that not one of them was drawing on just the one power I used them to illustrate. Every single one of them was drawing on the wholeness of who they are. So let's go back to the scene on Mount Doom in The Lord of the Rings. Frodo has collapsed on the barren slope, consumed by the weight of the ring. Sam crawls to him and cradles him. They are so close, and yet the peak seems achingly far away. And in that talk, I held Sam up as an example of strength, the ability to persevere. And he was. Let's take a closer look. What moves Sam up that mountain is love. In fact, what has moved Sam all along is love. A love so fierce and unconditional that it refuses to abandon Frodo, even when to go forward could mean losing everything that Sam once held dear. That's not strength alone. That's love without regard to the price paid. And what keeps him believing that the climb is worth it, that there is still good in this world worth fighting for is faith. Unflinching faith. Sam's little bare hobbit toes are dug all the way in. He will not abandon his faith in what he knows to be good and worthwhile. And the energy that propels him forward, that insists on aliveness even in the darkest moment, is zeal, joy as spiritual resistance against despair. And when he reminds Frodo of the beauty of the Shire, the orchards in blossom, birds in the hazel thickets, the taste of strawberries, that is zeal in expression, passionate and unwavering and energetic support. And power, that spiritual aspect that we liken to electricity, cultivated in silence, completely neutral, and expresses through whatever we are aligned with. And I imagine Sam, the unassuming gardener, quietly enjoying his garden, aligning with the life and the beauty around him, strengthening the wire that carries his spiritual power. And wisdom, that faculty that points us in the direction of doing the right thing rather than being right. And Sam used the ability of power on the side of Mount Doom to choose to do the right thing. And we said that understanding is the faculty that perceives clearly so that we know what to align with. And Sam knew what to align with. And Sam has to release something on that mountain too. In order to go on, he has to release his vision of a future quiet life in the Shire. He has to release his sense of his own limitations, that he's just a simple gardener. That release, elimination, is what makes room for all those other powers to flow through him with a fuller expression. And life, that animating vitality that insists on pressing forward even when every physical argument says stop. And imagination, seeing the outcome of the ring tossed into the abyss. And will, that conscious, deliberate choice to say yes to something larger than himself, which just might be divine order, that attribute which author Sharon Connors told us harmonizes the other 11 powers to produce the best possible outcome. Sam says, I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you. And that about encompasses all of those powers. And now we'll take a left turn and go to Panem, into the future. I held Katniss as Will, and she was. But again, let's take another look at that moment when her sister Prim is called to be the female attribute. That moment when Katniss steps forward at the reaping and says, I volunteer as tribute. That step not only contains will, but love. A fierce, protective, sacrificial love for her sister that overrides every instinct for self-preservation. And it contains faith that stepping forward is right without even knowing how the story will end. It contains strength, the capacity to do the most loving thing, even when physically, mentally, and emotionally, it's going to cost Katniss everything. And that step took the power of elimination, the release of her careful invisibility, her strategy of staying small and unnoticed, her dream of surviving, of being the one who took care of her family. I volunteer as tribute. And Yoda. I held Yoda up as an example of power, and he is. But Yoda showed us power as it flows with understanding. He perceives clearly what's happening beneath the surface of every situation, and that gives his power direction. And Yoda expresses wisdom, his capacity to see a larger pattern. And Yoda's power flows as love for Luke, for the Force, for the living balance of everything. And Yoda releases any thought or belief that would restrict his ability to be in harmony with order, the natural harmony of the Force, and he encourages Luke to do the same. He says to Luke's open-mouthed belief as the X-wing rises out of the swamp, your lack of belief is why you fail. Yoda embodies and expresses life itself. He is the force made visible. Vitality and aliveness and zeal expressing through a very small, very ancient, very wise being who walks with a stick and yet can move faster than the eye can track. Do or do not. There is no try. And that's what it can look like when a human being or a hobbit or a young woman from District 12 or a 900-year-old Jedi master is fully alive to the fullness of their being. Not selecting carefully one power from a menu of 12 options, but expressing their revealed wholeness. Now let's return to the true life story of that young American named Terry Dobson, who was riding a train in the suburbs of Tokyo. And for those of you not familiar with this story, Terry was a student of Aikido, and while giving lip service to the primary tenets of Aikido, which is a Japanese martial art whose founder described it as the art of reconciliation, Terry secretly harbored a desire to use Aikido to kick some righteous behind. And Terry saw his chance when a large, drunk, very angry man stumbled into his train car early one morning, terrifying everyone on board. Terry stood up. But before he had a chance to act, a tiny, immaculately dressed, elderly Japanese gentleman took over. Yoda in disguise, no. He took no notice of Terry and simply beamed at the drunk man as though he had the most important secret to share. "Come here and talk with me," he said. And the big man did. Within minutes, the drunk man was sobbing, telling the old man that he'd lost everything: his wife, his job, his home, his dignity. The old gentleman patted the seat next to him and said, My, that's a very difficult predicament indeed. Why don't you sit right here and tell me all about it?" And when Terry exited the train at his stop, he looked back to see the drunk man with his head in the old man's lap, the elderly gentleman stroking his hair with complete tenderness. And Terry sat down on a bench, feeling very ashamed and very much enlightened, because what he had wanted to accomplish with force, the old man had accomplished with a few kind words. Now, which power was the old man using, do you think? Love, that knew the drunk man was an expression of the divine. Understanding, that perceived what was actually happening beneath the surface. Wisdom, that didn't judge by external appearances and knew exactly what the moment required. Strength, that showed up as a calm, unshakable presence. And zeal, for the aliveness of another human being. Order, that quietly arranged the conditions for healing. And will, that chose engagement over avoidance. Power, expressed as self-mastery. That old Japanese gentleman wasn't selecting one or even two powers from a spiritual toolbox, the hammer, the screwdriver. He was simply expressing the fullness of who he was, the fullness of who he had cultivated himself to be. All together now. All the powers together now. And so here we are at the end of our journey. We've traveled far, from the Shire to Hogwarts, from Dagobah to Panem to a train in Tokyo. And every story, every character, every moment of courage and sacrifice and a quiet, faithful persistence revealed to us that we are not a collection of 12 separate capacities waiting to be activated one at a time. We are whole already, now. And what I've come to trust after studying these for a while is that you can't get it wrong. You don't need to memorize all 12 powers. You don't need to consult a list before you act. Before you act, or before you choose love, or before you decide to persevere. And you don't need to worry about whether or not you're reaching for the right one. Once you choose to reach, what is needed will arise. These powers are not 12 isolated rooms in a house. They are one house, and every door opens into every other room. Sam didn't pause on the slopes of Mount Doom to consult his spiritual toolbox. He just loved Frodo and acted. And Katniss didn't inventory her available powers before stepping forward at the reaping. She just knew what was right and chose it. Yoda didn't select carefully from a menu of Jedi faculties before lifting that X-wing. He simply aligned with something larger than himself and allowed it to rise. So I invite you to use what serves you from this series. If the 12 Powers framework gives you language for your experience, wonderful, let that serve you. If what stays with you is Sam on the side of Mount Doom, or Katniss stepping forward, or an old man on a train in Tokyo, my favorite, equally wonderful. Claim it as your inspiration. And if there is one ring to rule them all, I think it just might be love. The Beatles knew it. All you need is love. Rumi knew it. Be foolishly in love, because love is all there is, and love is the bridge between you and everything. Katniss knew it. Sam on the slopes of Mount Doom knew it. Yoda knew it. And the old Japanese man on the train knew it as well. Religious science founder Ernest Holmes knew it. He writes, "Love will find the solution to every problem, will answer every question, and ultimately vanquish every foe." And the Fillmore's teacher, Emma Curtis Hopkins, knew it. She writes, "Love is God. God is omnipresent. Thus, love is omnipresent. It is my idea of good that all is love." Not love as sentiment, but love expressed as faith, as strength, as wisdom, as understanding, as release, as will. Love wearing 12 faces, and probably many, many more. Love expressing as the wholeness of who you are. All together now.
Thank you for listening today. I want to invite you to check out our Positive Path meditations. You can take a listen anytime you need to recenter and realign. Have a wonderful day.